And we're ready to go. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome everybody here. I'm going to call Community Development Committee meeting to order for Monday, April 24th. We have two items on the agenda for community development. The first item is the matter of a liquor license transfer as requested by Ohio Mart Group, doing business as Ohio Mart Elyria, 515 Abbey Road. This would be a permit class C1, C2. There were no issues reported by the Elyria Police Department, Safety Service Director, or the Building Department. Are there any questions or concerns? Seeing none.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that the city does not request a hearing.
Okay, motion made that the city does not request a hearing by Mrs. Mitchell, seconded by Mr. Oswald. Question on the motion? All in favor of the motion, please use the voting sign aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carried. Okay, item 2 is the matter of a discussion of daycare requirements for the city of Elyria. This was referred by Councilman Oswald and Mayor Whitfield. Who would like to start?
Would you like to start?
Okay, thank you. Through you, Chairman, and good evening, everyone. This is as well as the Planning Commission. Sometimes you all are looking for direction from the Planning Commission in these matters. And as you know, we've now gone on this comprehensive land use plan project to update our zoning. And so we think this is a relevant conversation for today because these requests have almost been every other month at the Planning Commission. So what it is for people to operate a child care out of their homes, type A child care, which many of these our applicants are asking to go from a type they're trying to go from a type B to a type A daycare. And a type B, they can have up to 6 children in the home. And then a type A, they can have up to 12 children in the home. And as you know, daycare is just an important issue for our residents. As you got 2 working parents oftentimes, and the need to have child care is essential. And over the past 2 years, we've approved some and we've denied some. And so I thought it was important for us to have some discussion around what are as we look to maybe update our code, what are some of the important values that this committee would like to consider when looking at this code that we have on the books? Some of the things that the Planning Commission has looked at is the traffic. So where is this home located and how will it impact traffic? Another thing that we've looked at is fencing, making sure the home is fenced in so that the children are safe. Another thing that we've looked at is the size of the lot. Though, I'll share right now our code says the person should, if you're going to operate one of these facilities, should have 30,000 square foot lots. The ones that we've approved have had as little as 13,000 square feet, or even less than that. So, that hasn't really been an issue for us at the Planning Commission. Parking has been an issue of where people are going to park. If people pulled up all at once, how would traffic be impacted in terms of parking? But we really want to open a discussion for you all because I think it puts staff in a tough position, because I think Chief Farkas, as you know, goes by the book on everything. And so he's looking at black and white on everything. And sometimes he veers out of that, but most of the time it's black and white in terms of his assessment of things. And then our Planning Commission, we've felt conflicted because even when we've approved them, we know that's against what the code says. So more recently, we've erred on the side of not approving them, and then they've come before you all, and then you all, the past few ones, have rejected them. And then I guess the other piece that's really been essential to us is having feedback from the neighbors, making sure all the neighbors have signed on to this. So we really wanted to open up the discussion. Councilman Oswald attends those planning commission meetings, so he sees the discussion. So Chairman, I'll pass the rest to him.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Mayor. So I did go to, I've been going to the Planning Commission meeting, and this comes up a lot. And so I guess I don't want to get into a heated discussion yet, but I'd like to start getting some thoughts so we can get this thing squared away so that we can feel comfortable as a council when Mr. Farkas tells us that he recommends that we can go along with it because we understand they've done their due diligence. But when he says that it shouldn't be approved, then we should go along with that also. So we want to make sure that these requirements aren't too constrictive. But I guess that's what started me off in the thought. I guess the first thing is, what do we want in the city of Elyria? Do we want these child daycare centers or not? Are we going to get to a point where we have so many of them and then they're not going to be good for the whole neighborhood? I guess back in the year 2000, there was a small change, but we didn't find that one just yet exactly what it was. So it really hasn't been looked at, but we know the need is there. It's just how do we do it? Let's just say that I have 3 people in my area. All of a sudden, I got all these daycares. Do I really want that for my neighborhood? So the other thing that I'm finding out is that a lot of these that supposedly have this Class B, really, they don't even have a Class B. They haven't really done for the approval process to be a Class B, and they're already going for a Class A. And Chief Farkas, if I'm saying something wrong, please step in and let me know. So the things that I wanted for maybe some understanding is that one of the things that we talked about was 30,000 square foot is the size of a lot, okay? So just to give you an idea, so if you don't understand about square footages, let's say a lot, which is a pretty good size in the city of Elyria, would be 100-foot frontage and 150 foot deep, okay? That would be 15,000 square feet. So that's a pretty good size lot, and that's still only half of what they are recommended for something like this. They're recommending, as far as the frontage, that's the length in your front yard, like for the length of your sidewalk. They want it to be 175 foot wide. There's not hardly one house in the basic city of Elyria that has 175. Generally, 100 foot wide is pretty good. So that kind of gives you an idea for that, but I guess maybe we need to check in to first, do we have some comparables for other cities of the same size? So we can kind of see what they're doing, and if they're having issues as far as that, so then we could kind of maybe piggyback on what they're doing and get an idea. The other thing is that I don't know if we've got it in there, but we probably should have something on hours of operation. You know, do we want something that's open for 24 hours? And then how many people do you have that are helping work for their? So I think that's just a couple issues. And here again, like the mayor says, we need these. We want to find a good place that works for everybody. And I was just trying to get a few thoughts in my head, and those were a few things that come out. But I think the main question is, what do we want? Do we want a lot of these? Do we want to keep them so constrictive? And that's what we want. And then when they come here to council and they don't meet 30,000 square foot and they're not giving their blessing, then I'm going to say I'm going to go along with what Planning Commission says, and I'm not going to approve it. I don't want to be put in that position. I want to have a good, solid set of rules in that ordinance so it makes everybody's job easier. Thank you. If anybody else would like to comment.
And Chairman, I'll just add one thing. The 2 that we have approved in recent history since I've been here, Chief Farkas didn't recommend either one of those. So those were the instances where he just went by his book and said this, and we used our discretion as leaders and decided otherwise. So I just want to make sure that was clear for the record.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Oswald and Mayor Whitfield. Does anybody else have any ideas or wants to chime in on any questions or comments? First, I saw Mr. Sarah.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just, I guess, a question maybe for Mr. Farkas. What's the process coming to Planning Commission? Don't they already have a state approval and have to wait for our zoning or whatever we're doing?
Mr. Chair, through you to Mr. Sarah, as far as the state regulations go for daycares, that is an independent function. Our zoning kicks in regards to either an A or a B use. Either daycare must have a conditional use to operate. I think every single daycare that has been presented to the panel has not. So meaning they were operating this daycare as a B without any type of approval, but because the state says you have to have local jurisdiction authority for an A, they're forced to come to this board and get the blessing. As I indicated, as the mayor said,
I just want to clarify real quick. They didn't get an approval from you all. They did get an approval from the state to operate their daycare. So let's make sure we're specific.
our local ordinance requires either use, A or B requires a conditional use.
From us.
The state does not regulate that. I don't even think they police that. As far as jurisdictional fire department inspections, the fire department should be involved on these if they're made aware. I can't speak for them, but that is another layer of defense. Now, again, these rules and regulations, these are set standards that we have, and as the mayor indicated, I'm ethically obligated to deny these because they don't substantially meet any of the requirements established in our law. And that's why we're here today.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the ones that we have here, those are not state law? Those are something that was put in by a previous council?
Mr. Chair, through you and Mr. Sarah, the ordinances I'm referencing that Mr. Oswald may have a copy of from a past memo are our regulations that we require.
Thank you.
So again, through you, Chairman, there's two things I think I want to make sure we lift up. One is that these folks have to get state approved to be able to operate these, and the state comes in and does inspections. And it would be great, I think, for one of our future presentations to have someone come and share the type of process that the state goes through to vet these sites. So these aren't just, they can't just do this without any sort of approval, which includes safety and fire and things like that. And the other piece I want to lift up is what Councilman Oswald said, is how far our ordinance is away from the reality. That we say you have to have a 30,000 foot square lot to be able to do that, and it's just the only homes in the city that have that. I think you've mentioned it before.
Very few.
There's a very few neighborhoods that have that size lot, period. So it's clear it's another one of those instances of our code being outdated, and this is an opportunity for us to update it.
Okay. Mr. Lippian.
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you. Mr. Farkas, do we have on record how old this ordinance is stipulating the 30,000 square feet?
Mr. Chair, through you to Mr. Lippian, that question was posed today. I don't have when that actual ordinance was generated. As Mr. Oswald indicated, it was most recently revised in 2000, but as to the specifics of what was revised, it wasn't done as a whole. It was most likely done what I call a Band-Aid for one particular area of the ordinance.
Okay. Mrs. Davis, and then.
Through you, Chair, I'm not on this committee. I'd just like to ask a couple questions about this. In the past, we know that the welfare department has in-home care for children, for parents who work, and they were right in our neighborhood. But I've never seen over 6 kids at these homes. Never seen over 6. The welfare, so that was, and I know that they had inspections and they had to meet a criteria, I know for a fact. And so my other question too was that those homes that those people care for, those in-home kids that was under the program, how far out did these people search the neighborhood to ask, about their intake, their take on them having a daycare? I don't want you to go right next door or 2 doors down. When I say a neighborhood, because the kids are affected by the neighborhood when they're out playing. We want to know who's in that neighborhood when the kids are out playing. So I don't know how far are they checking to see the approval from the neighbors.
Mr. Chair, through you, unfortunately, I cannot answer that. I have to defer to the law director in regards to notification and responses.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Ms. Davis, if you're asking what Job and Family Services would do, or how they handled it?
Well, I knew how they handled it.
Okay.
I want to know, what are we doing as the city? How far are we asking them to, through you, Chair, I'm sorry, through you, how far out are we asking the residents to see how, when they go to the neighborhood? When we say they're checking in the neighborhood with their neighbors, I want to know, how far are you going? Are you going to the back, to the front, to the side? What is the range that you're asking?
Okay. Through you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Farkas, please correct me if I'm wrong, but it's my understanding that typically with these types of matters, it's adjacent property owners who receive the notice. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, through you to Amanda, typically it is all surrounding properties that either are across the street, adjacent to the site, and behind. Typically, it's all parcels what we call touch that particular site. Going outside that bubble may not come into play unless some business is coming in to, let's say, a marijuana facility. Our marijuana facility law requires that no facility such of that nature shall be within 500 feet of a daycare. So with these daycares being unknown and undocumented, how are we to know if they are within that radius? So to answer the first question, typically it's across the street and around and behind. But outside the wider radius, I cannot answer that.
But also through you, Mr. Chair, Councilwoman Davis, if you recall, though, however, when these matters do move up the ladder, if you will, from Planning Commission to Council Committee and then ultimately to full Council, that is part of the reason why there is a public hearing. And the public hearing is announced publicly. So realistically, if someone isn't looking for that, will they see it? That I can't answer. But it is to promote and proclaim that the matter is going to be taken up before this public body, rather than just notifying those immediately neighboring properties.
Okay, I know we've got a lot of hands going up and down. I just want to make sure I'm fair here. So the next one would be Mr. Tollett. After that, it would be Mrs. Mitchell, and then back to Mr. Lippian.
Thank you,
Mr.
through
Clark.
you, Mr. Chair, and I am not on this committee. Mr. Farkas, are you saying that some of the applicants who came through Planning Commission had been operating illegally when they came to the commission? Is that an accurate statement? That's question number one.
Mr. Chair, through you to Mr. Tollett, yes, per my research, I looked to see if any past conditional use was granted for the type B, and they have come up empty.
Very interesting. Okay. And then the second question might pertain to Mr. Pernesti, Chief Pernesti. If you have a 100 by 300 lot, now I'm going to dig into your math skills. I know. If you have a 100 by 300 foot lot and the average home, let's say, is 1,400 square feet with a driveway and a garage, that would seem like a small, even at 30,000 square feet, you would have a smaller backyard that could potentially need to be fenced. If you had 12 children in that area, in that small area, is that safe? Is my question.
I'm not the expert on to say what would be safe. I guess the only thing that I would comment on is what we would control in the fire department, and that would be the inspection process. We do inspect. Somebody mentioned that we do inspect if but usually what happens is, and I can get you the specifics, but usually what happens is if Mr. Smith or Mrs. Smith wants to have a daycare and they apply, they must have some sort of, because we don't say, hey, if you want to run a daycare, you have to notify the fire department. A lot of ours are the other way. They contact us. So there must be something out there that when you want to have a daycare, it's like on a checkbox or checklist. So we get those calls, and then we'll go out there and inspect it. But we don't, as a department, as a rule, don't get into our, because it's not really in our jurisdiction, if you will, to talk about those kind of things. But, you know.
Then while you're there, my last question, if you had a Class A where there's 12 children, that means 24 different vehicle trips a day, potentially, just from an outside source, coming, going with 12 children a day. That seems like a very, very high amount of traffic for a driveway, again, in the event of a fire or even patrolling the streets. When you look at businesses, I'm sure you look at vehicle traffic and safety. Is that out of your bailiwick also?
Probably, I would say yes, because, you know, when you look at all the businesses that we have with the coming and going, or even daycares that are commercial daycares, what have you, we really don't take that into account other than for hydrant spacing or fire lanes, but those are specific to a commercial occupancy, you know?
Right.
So, it's like fire lanes, if they build a building, and we have, there's fire lanes that are by code, whatever.
But a residential does not.
No, there is, no. That's where the width of streets and all that comes into play when they have a street, when you put in a street, so.
Thank you, Chief.
I can't answer that either, I'm sorry.
Gotcha. Nope, that's fine.
Okay, great. Mrs. Mitchell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Everyone who has worked and has children knows the importance of finding a good daycare center. And I don't think that we're here this evening to say we don't need daycare centers, because there's never enough. There's never enough. I will agree that these ordinances may need to be updated, and it's something that we should be taking a look at. But when something goes through Planning Commission and they approve it or deny it, that's what I rely on, because they're the experts. I'm going by their expert opinion. Yes, we ask questions, but I feel that they should know what they're doing. So I said that to say this. We have to update the ordinances, I agree, but let's rely on the experts to help us make our decisions. And that's all I have to say.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Mr. Lippian?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Sometimes I'm getting the sense that the experts, like Mr. Farkas and perhaps the Planning Commission, are looking to council to legislate, to update antiquated legislation to fit the times. One of my questions is, Mr. Farkas, you said this legislation was last updated in 2000. What was the update in 2000 when they updated it? Do we know?
Now, Mr. Chair, through you to Mr. Lippian, the ordinance does not say. Mr. Oswald had posed that question to me, and I don't know if he reached out to the secretarial team and council's chamber to find out the answer. I don't know if there is a specific answer without searching that specific ordinance number. Which, Colleen, do you have that by chance?
So,
that number? No. Oh, Kenny did.
Yeah. Great. Excuse me, through you, Mr. Chair, Councilman Lippian. I certainly don't want to say with 100% certainty, but I would imagine that if there is a citation there based on the date of the passage, we could pull that ordinance and compare some language to see, if it was a housekeeping typo type cleanup or what that change was back in 2000. It would take obviously a day or two to pull that, and then we could do a little deep dive to see when it was originally passed and any subsequent revisions.
Thank you, Law Director. Mr. Lippian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to follow up. Yeah, because let's be honest, many, probably most of the individuals utilizing these daycares are women who are in the workforce trying to provide for their children. Some of them are single mothers that can't get daycare through other means. Sometimes this is the most affordable daycare that they can find. And if 2000 was the last time this was revised, it raises the question, was our society as sensitive to the needs of working women in the year 2000 as it is today? And mightn't we consider an update that reflects our current societal awakening to the needs that today's women have to provide childcare? I just know that many of these are probably Illyrians, and I'm not at this point thinking so much about the needs of the daycare itself. I'm thinking about the needs of the mothers that need the daycare to go to their jobs and be productive citizens in the city of Elyria. So going back to the 12 cars, 24 trips, it's possible that that's the amount of trips for a child's birthday. You know, this is a lot of cars, but it's not an obscene amount of cars coming in and out. And I just think that we should be very careful to say that the experts completely must be relied upon, because the experts' hands are tied if council doesn't legislate and update antiquated legislation to suit the times. That being said, I'm not saying that this is the update that's required. I'm simply stating that perhaps it's time to review whether we should update, what that update should be, and the people that will be impacted by it if we do nothing.
Thank you, Mr. Lippian. Mr. Snyder.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Farkas. Do you know if any of the cases presented have met the lot requirements, whether they've been approved or denied?
Mr. Chair, through you. The answer is no. The closest was 108 Regency Court. That was a corner lot, and I want to say that was in the realm of either 10 or 13,000 square feet. Unfortunately, these lots and the requirements are outdated. We are having a land use upgrade. This question was posed to our zoning administrator that is handling that portion. As a request of the mayor, I asked that he please get some comparables, and unfortunately, I did not get that information from them in time for this meeting. We have asked, because this is part of the zoning update as a whole, we don't want to put the cart before the horse and start changing laws before we know exactly what we want to do for the land use. So I understand the need is urgent, but what we have before us is what we have before us, and the decision has to be made with what's in hand, not what is going to be coming down the road.
Thank you.
Mr. Corbin.
Through you, Mr. Chair, has anybody looked to see what neighboring communities, what ordinances are on the books, or how they're handling the daycare issue in their communities?
Mr. Chair, through you, as indicated, yes, we have that in motion. I have posed that question to our review board. I've asked the zoning administrator that is handling this particular part that he please look into this particularly. We had asked him to investigate regarding outside dining. They responded to that with comparables of other cities and their processes. I have now posed that same question for daycares to get some kind of comparable or balance to see if we're way off base or are we on point.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Corbin. Are there any other questions? Oh, Mayor Whitfield.
Through you, Chairman. So I think what I heard was the desire for this to go to the Planning Commission. I think one of the things I would love to hear, I think I heard from you all, to take back to the Planning Commission is looking at other communities and having that comparison and coming with a recommendation to you all from the Planning Commission of an updated ordinance working in conjunction with our consultants. I think that's what I heard, and if so, that's clear as it need to be.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor. I agree with you, Mayor. I think that's what we've heard tonight. I think there's a lot to consider. I think we're here, and I think Planning Commission, we all want workable solutions. And we have to also take safety and concern and maybe conform and change this so it does work for folks to have daycare, but also to make it safe and workable and something that's going to be that we're going to be easy with. You know, it's not going to be any problems going forward. So are there any other questions or concerns? Okay, seeing none, It was an excellent discussion. There were good questions, and we'll stay tuned, and we'll see what the Planning Commission reports back. Thank you. This time, I'd ask Mr. Stewart to please call Finance.
I'll call Finance to order.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. 2 items on the agenda for the joint meeting. First one is the matter of a downtown historic improvement program applicant for 246 2nd Street. Mona from Community Development.
Good evening, everyone. Yes, as stated, this is for a downtown historic redevelopment grant application. I believe there might have been an error on my referral stating that it was for facade improvement, so I apologize for that. This is for the downtown historic redevelopment grant. Our applicant is the Elyria Elks Club at 246 2nd Street. They are proposing to do a roof improvement, which Tom Brino is here to talk to you about it for a little bit. But they have, just to give you some background information, they did get comments from the Landmarks Commission, and overall they were pretty supportive of the project. And also it did go to the Elyria Economic Development Committee, and the committee voted to support the project as well. This is for a grant up to $50,000 match. The application was for up to $27,890 for the applicant.
Just please state your name and address for the record, please.
Turn the mic on.
Oh, sorry about that. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and council members. My name's Tom Brino. I'm a trustee at the Elyria Elks at 246 2nd Street. And about 5 years ago, we had a committee put together to look at our roof. We had a couple of roofers on the board of trustees at that time. They determined it was in dire need of improvement at 5 years ago. So we did some fundraising internally. We raised about $30,000, did some of the needed improvements at that time, and continued to do some fundraising, and then COVID hit. And our membership has dropped about 30%, 35% since COVID. We have not been able to do the fundraising needed. So instead of replacing the entire roof, which 5 years ago was estimated at $120,000, West Roofing has offered a solution that they're going to apply a foam to the top and then sprinkle it with some granulated material. They guarantee it for 20 years. The cost is about half of that, which we can't afford if we have some assistance. So the building itself is well over 110 years old. It was built as an Elks Club back in, I believe, 1910. Before that, our location was on Broad Street, so it was destroyed by the fire that came across Elyria. So we've been a member, the Elks have been a member in our community for just as long. And we do a lot of good things for the community. We donated about $69,000 back to the community last year, $7,000 to the police department of that, about $20,000 to CP of Greater Cleveland, which is our #1 charity. We gave about $8,000 to students in the scholarships that I know of, and among some other things. So we're just looking for some assistance to help us with the roof project this year.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Mr. Lippian.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much for getting the chance to tell you this in person. I'm sure I speak on behalf of council when I say thank you for the $7,000 you gave to our Elyria Police Department. And we did send a card thanking you for that.
You did.
It was a very kind and generous and charitable donation. Is the roof insured?
That I'm not sure. I believe it is. The whole building is insured, yes.
Okay. Because we recently had a catastrophic windstorm. So if the roof is insured, have you checked to see if insurance would be able to cover potential damage from recent windstorm that we had?
I have not, but I will look into that as well.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Lippian. Any other questions? Mr. Tolet?
Through you, Mr. Chairman. I'm part of the Economic Development Committee that approved it. A question arose in committee, sort of a question, is this a repair or new roof? And I argued that it was a new roof because you're receiving a 20-year warranty on this roof. And normally repairs don't come with a warranty. So this is an entire new roofing system that's going on top of an old roofing system.
That is correct.
And that it's a newer technology with roofing, and obviously the engineers have studied it, that the weight can hold it up, or West Roofing wouldn't do it. So I wanted to let you know I completely support this project.
Thank you. You are correct. It is a new roof going over the old one.
Thank you, Mr. Tolet. Are there any other questions, concerns, comments? Okay, seeing none, I will read the committee report.
Thank you.
We have considered the Downtown Historic Redevelopment Grant Program application. I'm sorry. Oh, I apologize. I thought it was. We have considered the matter of the Downtown Historic Redevelopment Grant Program application. This is an ordinance authorizing the said application for redevelopment of the Elyria Elks Building at 246 2nd Street. This was approved by the Elyria Economic Development Committee on April 3rd, 2023. Could I have a motion from Community Development?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Snyder, seconded by Mr. Oswald. Question on the motion. All in favor of the motion, please use the voting sign aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Can I have a motion from Finance?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Sarah, second by Mr. Snyder. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Okay, the next item is the matter of a presentation by Mayor Whitfield for planning of ARPA funds or issue 6 funds and water fund sewage. Discussion only. Mayor Whitfield.
Thank you, Council President. And as was shared via email, what we thought the best use of time today would be spent speaking about our debt capacity and our financial status as a city. So I'll talk a little bit about, the journey from my purview, and then I'll pass it to the finance director to really dive into these numbers in terms of our financial capacity, in terms of borrowing, and why we think this is an important part of the conversation. So when I first got in here, January 2020, of course, we were staring down the moving of Bendix for the city. 3 months into the gig, COVID-19 hits, and then I received the prediction that we may be facing a 20% deficit due to the pandemic on our general fund. So we froze hiring, we laid off some employees, we cut some things in the budget, we tightened everything up. The year ended and things weren't as bad as we thought they were going to be. But we still didn't go revert right back to the way things were, because we knew Bendix was still an issue, so we were keeping our eyes on that. So 2021 comes, and we're fortunate to get this American Rescue Plan funding announced. And so what we did was we engaged the residents, we did a survey, and we had over 300 responses, and the top responses of where the residents wanted to see those funds go. The number 1 was in downtown and Midway Mall. The number 2 was Parks and Recreation. The number 3 highest response was with small businesses. The number 4 was nonprofits providing aid to our residents. And the number 5th was covering the losses that the city would have so that we could avoid layoffs. So we proposed uses to you all, and you all approved many of those. And, as you know, we were also in the waiting game to see what would happen with Midway Mall and what would be needed in that instance. So we approved those programs. We put, over $700,000 in a small business. We put about $400,000 into our nonprofits. We didn't do much in the Parks and Rec, a little under $250,000. We haven't done a lot into the Parks and Rec. We haven't done a lot into investing in it downtown, but we have done a whole lot in terms of covering our city losses. So just to provide a snapshot in terms of ARPA, as of April 3rd, the $14 million that had been either allocated or spent, out of that $14 million, 44% of that had gone towards the fire department, 24% of that had gone toward the police department, 5% of that had gone to sanitation, 2% had gone to muni court, 5% to small business, 1% to the home beautification, 3% to nonprofits, 2% to our parks and rec, 8% to our streets, and 1% to miscellaneous, which is still yet to be spent. So as you can see, this picture, we've spent a lot of money making sure that our city is covering our losses, which again, some of that money we think was a good investment because it's going to strengthen our general fund over time. But I thought that was important to note. And then in terms of why I think it's important for us to talk about our debt capacity and not look at ARPA as just this, silo in terms of how we look at our finances. When we first got the ARPA report, when we did this survey, we called this survey the Elyria Aid and Investment Survey. We painted a picture and said, hey, issue 6 just passed, so that's at least $30 million over the next 5 years. Got this American Rescue Plan Act, which is over $18 million that has to be spent before the end of 2024. We have this unique opportunity to do something unique, address some of the historic issues in the city, and really move the needle on things that are really important. Now we're in a case where it's similar. We still have issue 6 dollars that we can be planning for through 26. We still have this American Rescue Plan funds that we can be planning for, thinking about the future. But one of the big elements in this is also our bonding capacity. One of the reasons why I asked for us to hold off on any major purchases was twofold. One was, if this levy doesn't pass, all that American Rescue Plan money needs to pay for salaries. We can't finance salaries. So, whether it's a sanitation truck or a fire truck, we cannot finance salaries. So if this doesn't pass, that money could be used to carry us over as we're waiting to try to pass this thing in the future. Maybe some folks just got a lot of hope and faith. I choose to be cautionary on that, and I thought it was a reasonable request to hold off on that. Either way, I still have the same stance that we should wait to see if this issue passes, if issue 8 passes. And if this issue passes, then we should go to the drawing board and really look at some of these historic investments that we need to make in the city, including as some of the ones that I mentioned, the central maintenance garage, the pool, the fire station, the evidence building, all these kind of major purchases we need to make. But all that is predicated upon us passing this levy issue. So we thought the best use of time today was be more educational and talk about our debt capacity, because I think that's important to note. We have several things that we've borrowed for, where some of those things are rolling off of our books, like municipal court. We've been paying for since that was built. We've been paying for City Hall, and we've been paying for other things that the finance director can speak to. That as those things roll off, we can look at, it's almost like your credit. What's your credit availability? How much credit do you have available that we can actually pay back based on the revenue that's coming in, and make some key decisions about that. So if we look at our capacity, which you'll hear in the picture here, and we have, let's say $20 million of debt capacity that we feel comfortable with, then okay, let's talk about what type of projects we can get done with that debt capacity, whether it's CMG, the pool, the evidence building, et cetera, and have that sort of discussion. But we felt it was best to just be educational for tonight around our debt. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Finance Director Pulaski, if you want to, this is a little bit probably for the understanding what's going on from 23 to 26 and the columns on our general obligations. Can you just kind of go through that in a broad brush just so that everyone kind of understands what we're up against and what we have as
John, let's start with the governmental activities, the activity in 2022. Now, just the current debt service that we did in 2022. Okay, we can start there.
This is fine.
That's fine. So we have obviously enterprise funds that have their own source of revenue stream to pay for sewer and water debt, and we have general obligation debt, which basically is borrowing for projects that don't involve water and sewer. And these bonds are paid from the general bond retirement fund and or a number of special revenue funds. So going through these, we are going to have a few that are going to be dropping off the books. Actually, 2 were dropped off the books last year. So the Chestnut Commons bonds, these are the bonds that were issued for the original Chestnut Commons Drive and the street lighting and what have you when Walmart went in. So that is going to be paid off this year. However, that bond is being paid off with tax increment financing payments. So even though the bonds will be retired, the TIFs will still come in, but it won't be able to be used for any other debt. It'll be, I'm sure there's a formula in the TIF agreement. Right now, if the TIFs come in over and above the bond payment, which they have over the course of the bonds, pretty much all the excess goes to the Midview Local School District. So these will fall off this year, but it won't impact the General Bond Retirement Fund. Moving down, we have the police and fire pension bonds, and these bonds were issued, I don't know how much detail you want me to go in with all this, but these were issued many, many years ago to pay off a long-term debt that not only the city of Elyria had, but all municipalities across Ohio to bail out the police and fire pension fund because it was underfunded for so long back in the 1960s. So at one point in time, we were set up with a loan, and the legislature finally enabled cities to issue bonds to pay off our loan at a deep discount. So we did that many, many years ago, and those bonds will be retired at the end of in December of this year. They're being paid out of the police and fire pension fund. So when they fall off the books, that money that's freed up can be used for current pension expenses, but obviously not for any other debt retirement. And then we have the City Hall construction bonds. Those are due to fall off in 2026, I believe. Let me take a look here. Yes, 2026. So in just 3 short years, the bonds that we issued to pay for this building that we're in now, all the rehab and reconstruction, that will free up about $475,000 in debt service dollars in the bond retirement fund. We have the industrial parkway bonds. Those bonds will be paid off next year, next December. That will free up $62,000 in bond debt service payments. There's actually two series of industrial parkway bonds. The other one also matures next year. That'll free up an additional $72,000 in debt service payments. And the muni court construction bonds, those won't be retired until 2032. The majority of that is being paid from the muni court construction fund, which is funded by court fees imposed by the judges, and the balance comes out of our general bond retirement fund. Now, last year, 2022, we had the energy conservation bonds that were paid off. They were paid out of the bond retirement fund. That frees up about $500,000 in debt service revenue starting this year. And we paid off the various purpose improvement bonds, and that frees up about $360,000 in the general bond retirement fund. So, providing that we get our income tax renewed, this money is going to be about $1 million, $1.2 million that's going to be falling off the books with what we had paid last year and what's going to be paid over the next couple of years. So we're going to have some money to we'll be able to issue more bonds and pay off with the money that we're paying on these other bonds. However, so council has the authority to split. See, the money that goes in the bond retirement fund is property tax revenue. It's the inside millage. So we get 4.2 mils of inside millage. By law, a small percentage has to go into the police and fire pension funds. The balance can be split between the general fund and the general bond retirement fund upon council's approval. So if that's, God forbid, if we don't get the income tax renewed by next year, we may have to look at redirecting some of the money that's going into the bond retirement fund into the general fund to keep people working. But if it passes, then we're going to have extra money on hand to borrow for projects that we've discussed or are about to discuss. Then we have the Ohio Public Works Commission loans. These are interest-free 10-year loans that we get through the state for various road projects, and you can see that our debt payment is about $102,000 per year. That comes out of the bond retirement fund. We have the 2 fire trucks, capital leases on 2 fire trucks. One will be retired this year, and the other one will be retired in 2025. Them have been being paid out of the Issue 6 fund. We have the state infrastructure bank loans for the State Route 113 paving project and the US Route 20 paving project. Those are being paid out of the Muni Motor Vehicle Tax Fund, the license plate fees. So that them together are about $108,000 in annual debt service payments. And then we go to the business type activities. And this is where you're going to see big numbers, obviously because of the sewer projects. So in the bond category, I didn't split these out, but we have, John, if you go over all the way to the right, to the total column. So for bonds in the water and sewer fund, we have a total of $51,168,000 outstanding in long-term bonds. Most of that is sewer. You go down to OWDA loans, we have another $39,732,000 in outstanding OWDA loans. All of them are sewer with the exception of one small water at the very end at $34,943, and the first one is a water loan, and I think the fifth one or the fourth one is water, the $7,394,000. So most of this is funding for this EPA mandated sewer projects, obviously, and that's what's driving sewer rates to go up. We have a number of leases on sewer vac trucks As you can see, 1.8 million. We pay off, most of them are 5-year leases. So basically your total business type activities, which means enterprise fund operations, funds that are self-supporting, their business type, we're selling a product like water, sewer service. We've got 93 million in outstanding long-term debt in bonds and loans. So, but there are, like I said, there are bonds dropping off the books. Whether we can use it for new projects remains to be seen, I guess, on issue 8 and what happens. So,
Mayor Whitfield.
Yeah, so again, I think, and that's a philosophical thing, I think, with me that I'm sure some of y'all are tired of, some of y'all appreciate, is, you know, as opposed to me just saying, here's what I think we should do, I'm always like, what do we want to do collectively? What does the residents want to do? What do you all see are the needs? And let's collectively come up with a shared vision for how we move forward versus just trying to push something through that I have an agenda on or something. So that's why I thought it was important for us to, you know, pass the levy, take a step back and have a comprehensive conversation of what do we want to do for the future. Because again, this is a once in a generation. I got a chance to spend time with mayors from all around the country last week. And I'm sure you guys read headlines from Cleveland and other communities that are grappling with this ARPA as well. And the thing you keep hearing people say, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. And I think it's important that we think about 40 years from now. We're thinking about the type of decisions we can make to impact historical issues in our city. And I want us to do that. I don't want I to do that. I want us to do that. So that's why we keep trying to put it before the public and put it before you all, and not just one person.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Plesky.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So these numbers, I'm currently working on the 2022 Annual Comprehensive Financial Report. As you know, it turns out to be about a 260-page book. So all of these numbers will be in that document. I'm working on it now. It has to be audited, so the first deadline, we have to have it into the state by May 30th. And we have to have it done into the Government Finance Officers Association by June 30th. I believe we're going to have to file for an extension because we had to wait on Ohio Police and Fire Pension Fund to get us some numbers to proceed. So I finally got those numbers Friday. So now I'm trying to finish the enterprise funds and then work on the government-wide statements and all the notes. So hopefully it'll be done by the end of July to the GFOA, but it will be turned in to the state by the end of May, but it won't be released until the independent auditors render their opinion. So, but all these numbers will be included in that.
Thank you, Mr. Plesky. Mr. Tolet.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Going back several months when I started, when I was going through with our finance director, question came up about ARPA funds and their use. You saw in this chart that a police, a fire truck and a sanitation truck were recently bonded. We use bonds. The reason we couldn't use ARPA funds for those, it's against ARPA rules to pay off debt with ARPA funds. You can use it for new capital expenditures, but you can't use it to answer that question, because I received a couple calls at my house about that. That truck was purchased and delivered, I believe, Joe, can you help me with that one, about 18 months ago, the newest truck? So it was purchased actually it was pre-ARPA, and the same with the sanitation truck.
Through you, Chairman, in response to
I wasn't finished yet, Mayor. Excuse me. Point of order. And the reason how our sanitation works is, and I'm going to keep it as simple as possible. Sanitation works. You have an expense one big annual expense, and it gets broken up pretty much between all the taxpayers. That's oversimplified, but right now it's running at a barely, which is why we had to bond this. We didn't have enough money to pay it. So the choice was either raise sanitation rates to the residents, because it became evidently clear that the 3 new sanitation trucks that were going to cost $1.3 million, they were a need, they weren't a want. We have to have these trucks to keep our sanitation functioning. So by using ARPA funds, we don't have that debt on the books, and we don't have to raise the rates for that amount of money. So that's another thing. The other thing to keep in mind, that just like you, how we all in this room have a credit rating, a lot of your personal credit rating is based on your debt. The city is no different, except it's called a bond rating. And the less we have on the books for debt, the better our bond rating. And because we have outstanding people in our finance department who have kept this in check for so long, our bond rating is extremely strong. I think we're an A+ rated company now with our bond rating, and continue to receive awards for that. So just wanted to touch on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tolet. Mayor Whitfield.
Yes, through you, Chairman, just a couple, I want to clarify a couple things in terms of make sure that there's accurate information being shared. When we talk about the bonding capacity and the utilization of ARPA funds, 2 things. One, when we were talking about bonding, we're not talking about paying these things back with ARPA, because that is not an eligible use. One of the things that I hope came across clear that the finance director was just trying to make sure people knew is that there's things that are rolling off of our books in terms of what we've borrowed on, and there's going to be funding freed up, and we wanted to make sure you all knew about that so that it's very clear this isn't doubling down. We're not increasing, our credit usage, but we're actually looking at what's available based on our current usage, and we still have a lot of capacity. But I just wanted to make sure that was clear as well. And the other thing I'll mention, one of the pieces that we had thought about, we talked about. Right now, we're in a position where all our ARPA funds, even before these last 2 purchases, all of our ARPA funds could be moved into our general fund through lost revenue. And we thought about making that recommendation, but one of the pieces of feedback that we had heard was once it went that way, we would stop thinking about the moment we're in. It would all go back to the status quo, kind of standard, doing business as usual. I still hope that even if we were to make that recommendation and move the rest of the funds into the general fund, that we recognize that we have a moment still here to make a decision around something large, whether it's through our debt capacity, using issue 6, some of our general fund. There's still a way to make a significant move at this moment. And that we thought it would be a much more thoughtful process with the ARPA, so that's why we thought leave it there. But I just want to make sure that was for the record too. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. Mrs. Mitchell.
Actually, Mr. Chair, Mrs. Davis had her hand up first, and then Mr. Oswald.
Okay.
And I'll go after them. Thank you.
Okay. Mrs. Davis.
Through you, Chair. My question to Mr. Pelez is that I know you mentioned once before that we had a sanitation truck that we owe over $300,000 and we only made like one payment of $50,000. Is that correct?
Through you, Chair, we have a note outstanding for $350,000 that we issued 2 years ago. I have not been able to pay down it. I've just been paying the interest. This year, I'm rolling over $300,000 and using existing sanitation of $50,000 to pay down on the note, only because last year we helped the sanitation fund out by budgeting money in the ARPA fund for sanitation services. So the $350,000 in short-term debt will turn into $300,000. I believe that note comes due at the end of June, so I'm starting to pay down on that.
Okay.
But that right now that's classified as short-term debt. I haven't gone to bonds on that yet because there's really nothing else to go to bonds, and I'd like to group everything together to make it more economical to do that. So
my next question to you also was, you said that we have a 5-year lease that's going to be paid off for those sewage vac trucks? We got a lease, we don't own them.
No, the lease, actually, how these work is that at the last year of the lease, the vendor that makes the trucks or deals the trucks makes a balloon payment on the city's behalf. They make the final lease payment, and they take the trucks back, and then we go into another lease.
Then we have to purchase new ones. Lease new ones.
Yes, sewer, yeah. That all comes out of the sewer fund.
All right.
Those are the camera trucks and the vacuum trucks.
Okay, thank you. Just one other question to the mayor. You said we had layoffs during the COVID time. Did you hire those people back?
Yes, all those people were brought back, and one of them retired.
Can I ask how many we're talking about?
1, 2, 3, 4. It was less than 5. It was 5 or less people who got laid off, and then 4 of them were brought back. One of them retired.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mrs. Davis. Mr. Oswald.
Through you, Mr. Chair, and directed to Mr. Pileski. That's great that we're getting some of these bonds paid off, okay? And then I look at the big number of the debt, and it's kind of scary. It's a lot of money, and, is this kind of normal in cities? I mean, is this what they always have? They've got all these bonds, or, does any city get to the point where they actually have money in the bank,
Well, there are some cities, and those that are cash rich don't have to borrow as much, obviously, but our debt is being driven primarily by sewer.
Yeah.
EPA mandated projects, and some of them are 13, 15, $20 million projects at a pop, There's no way you can pay for them with, we don't have that kind of cash on hand in the sewer fund, so.
And Councilman Oswald, through you, Chairman, the way I like to look at it, and kudos again to Director Pileski when we have these conversations, it's similar like when you've gotten approved, our debt capacity, our debt, what the bank says we can borrow is like $100 million. It's like huge number. And it's similar to when you get pre-approved at a bank and they're like, oh, you can buy that $350,000 home, but your family can only afford $150,000. And so the director does an amazing job of saying, yeah, we may be able to, on paper, because of our rating, do $100 million, but the number that he feels comfortable, that we feel comfortable with, is this range that we're talking about today with the debt that we currently have based upon City Hall, Municipal Court, these energy conservation bonds that have rolled off. There's a range that we feel comfortable with, if that's what we want us to be thinking about, not the $100 million number, because we got to pay this stuff back. But I thought, yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chair, again, so I guess can I make an assertion that actually maybe, other than all this sanitation money, we may be doing pretty decent within the city for how we're running our business? Is that correct to say?
Yeah, I would say that's correct.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Oswald. Mrs. Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Despite the fact that we are doing okay, issue 8 is still very important, and this is not a criticism by any means. It is a fact. I have been talking to my friends, my neighbors, my church members, and I'm begging them to vote for issue 8, and every single one of them say, what's that? They have no idea what issue 8 is. I personally have not seen one sign for issue 8, and maybe I'm driving in the wrong neighborhoods, but I don't see any signs. And I think if we want the public to get behind issue 8, and we need them to, we sincerely need everyone to vote for issue 8, we have to do a better job of telling that story of why we need it. It was not a criticism. I'm just telling you fact. When I ask people, please vote for issue 8, they don't have a clue what it is. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Lundy, and then it'll be Mr. Lippian.
Yeah, I would just like to respond to that question. The elections have changed over the years, and there's a lot of data that's available on who votes and when they vote and the likelihood of whether they may be supportive of a tax issue. So our money is being, I should say the campaign's money has been invested in direct mail to those voters who we think are most likely to vote. Also, by looking at data to those voters who we think would be most likely to be supportive. We were always taught in Columbus that signs don't necessarily vote. You want to make sure that you bring out the people you think are most likely to be supported. So it's a very targeted initiative that's taking place. I believe in 2019 there may have been a total of 976 voters, I think, who came out in a primary. This time around, we'd probably be thrilled if maybe there's 1,500 people who come out. So if there are some people who've said that they haven't received information, it may be for a couple reasons, not saying that it is in all cases. It may be because they're most likely not somebody who comes out in a municipal primary, or because it's somebody who the data shows that may have a tendency not to be supportive. So you try to get your positive voters out, and it's a new age, it's a new way of campaigns, and that's the reason why you're not seeing the signs, because the money's going in who we think is going to come out and vote. There's always concern that a lot of folks who come out just, vote no all the time without even taking the time to gather the information. So that's why you're seeing what you're currently seeing.
Mrs. Mitchell.
Mr. Chair, if I may, thank you. So everyone I talk to on my street and my friends, they all vote. And if they're getting the information, 9 times out of 10, they're throwing it in the trash. Let's just be honest. And you say signs don't vote, I guarantee you every person up here and out there that's running for election, they have signs. They have signs. You know why? Because people see signs and they go, oh, Donna Mitchell, 6th Ward, I'm going to vote for her. Oh, I saw her sign, or I saw a sign on Mayor Whitfield, or whatever. Every person up here has a sign. Signs don't vote, but people that see the signs do. And that's all I have to say about that.
Thank you, Mrs. Mitchell. Mr. Lippian.
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you. I see a sign, and when I got to be honest, when I hear somebody say we need to do better, but that's not a criticism, let's be honest, that's a criticism. I mean, hold on, I'm not finished, point of order. I mean, if little Johnny gives a performance and I say, Johnny, you could do better, that's a criticism. Now, there's a difference between a constructive and a destructive criticism. And I see a destructive criticism is where you provide no feedback, no positive feedback for improvement. Constructive criticism is where you say, you know what, you could have done better, here's what you can do instead. What I'm hearing from Ms. Mitchell in deference to her is constructive criticism. She would like to see more signs, but it is a criticism, so it's something that we should definitely take into account. But I've had a different experience when I've been out into the community. I went out to get my hair cut. I caught a lady leaving as I was coming in. I handed her an issue 8 sign. I said, hey, would you consider voting for this? She goes, oh yeah, I already know about that. I'm going to vote for that. So we can all have our personal experiences about who we're talking to in the community. But where it really counts is 2 weeks ahead. And I do think that we should see some signs out there and some digital media, but we also have to be sane and say it's okay to offer criticisms. And yours was constructive, so I think that's okay. There's nothing wrong with it.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Lippian. Anybody else on the panel? Mr. Whitfield, Mayor Whitfield.
So again, I guess I want to go back to the topic at hand, and through you, Chairman, my question to the full body here is, what do you want to see for the city of Elyria, for the future of the city of Elyria? What is it that you're hearing from your residents? What is it that you're seeing that, hey, this is where we need to be investing time, energy, and resources in? I would love to hear that from you all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mayor. I see 2 hands up already, so we're going to start with Mr. Tollett and then Mr. Lippian. Mr. Tollett.
What I am hearing, Mayor, is that I think a centralized pool is wanted by several, but it should be a citywide vote. And if we're going to do it, let's have its own standalone, because we know that, number one, instead of doing a $10 million pool, let's do a $18 million pool and make the levy to build the pool so that we have the $1 million a year to operate it, because that's the biggest expense. That will kill us. And for council to make that type of an expenditure, and there's two long-term debts with an aquatic center. You have the cost to build it and then a cost to operate it, which we don't know what the cost of chlorine and labor and all those things are going to be in 10 years after it's done. So I think to answer one of your questions, that the pool should be the central aquatic center, whether it be, why not, if Rocky River and Westlake and Strongsville can do it, why can't we do that? But in my opinion, and from what I heard, it should be a standalone for the voters to decide on, not council, for that type of expenditure. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tolet. Mr. Lippian.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Mayor, my feedback would be, and I've had conversations with residents when we had that intense rainstorm last year. I know a lot of residents in Miami had a pretty bad deal with flooding in their yards, and it's looking at the topography and looking at the Auditor of State and studying the geography in that area. Miami sits in a vulnerable position based on the floodplain. There used to be tiling in Miami, but when construction started not too long ago, modernizing the area, they tore out all that old tiling. And we are having a sewer relief put in place, which is going to help. But I would be really interested in seeing tiling going down Miami into the Black River to relieve some of the flooding in that area. And this is in conversations I've had with stormwater officials, Mr. Corzan, and others, because I don't want to see the inevitable deluge happen again and see people's basements flood again. So just from the First Ward's perspective, and just so the residents are clear, tiling is a way to get the water to outlet and gather and be directed towards, a destination, that destination being the Black River, to relieve some flooding. If it's possible to do ARPA, we could finance it. Again, the conversations brought up about needs versus wants. But under the category of needs, there's various ways about which you can afford the needs. You can finance it, like I need a new house, so I'm going to take a loan from the bank. You can pay for it outright because you have the money, although you're going to be left with a lot of debt. Or you can, there's all sorts of options. Bonded out. What I'd love to see is a sophisticated approach to the needs we do have, and it sounds like the mayor and council could be open to that. And going off of what Mayor Whitfield said about we and us, I would like to see we and us create that comprehensive, sophisticated plan to afford our needs in light of issue 8 and what kind of a reality that puts us into, for what it's worth.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Lippian. Mr. Oswald.
Seems to me there was other hands up, but thank you.
I can only pick one at a time.
Thank you, Mr.
I'm trying my best.
I guess when I'm talking to people, and the biggest thing, and I've said this, and I know everybody kind of understands, but I think everybody wants good city services. They want their leaves picked up, their trash, their water, their sewer. They want inexpensive rates that they can afford. We want good streets. If that couldn't be the number one thing that people want is streets, it's just, and we're trying to do that. We're trying to put more money into that. They want to have a good fire department, good police department. So I think when they come and they want something, generally speaking, we want to give them the money that they can do the job that they need, that they got to do. And the last thing I've been saying, and I'm real big on this, is economic development. And we have to try to pay for our bills. And if you can have good economic development, you have companies, businesses come into the city of Elyria for change rather than going out to the city of Elyria. That's where we can make up some money. And, I think we need that department that can focus just on economic development. Thank you.
Mr. Stewart, did you?
Yeah, Mr. Oswald took the words out of my mouth, because at the end of the day, this is a great conversation to see where we're at with our bonding capacity. But, at the end of 2024, these ARPA funds need to be expended. And I've been on record as saying that Bendix is no longer here with us. And that's $1.5 million on our income tax base. And it's great to have a pool, but a pool's not going to pay for, when you have only so much coming in, you have only so much going out. And in the perfect world, we'd like to make an impact over and through here. But at the end of the day, some hard decisions are still going to have to be made here in the next couple years because of that loss of that income. Really, this is a silver lining, if anything, about ARPA funds that have come here to help the city and other cities, not only Elyria, but Lorraine and that. So Finance Director Plesky wants to weigh in.
One thing to note in our discussion about the general bond retirement fund, so the only source of revenue in that fund is unvoted property tax millage, inside millage. Part of that, roughly $280,000, is in the form of rollback tax. There's currently a House bill that's making its way through wherever that would to reduce, I believe, the state income tax, but it would also eliminate the rollback tax. So there's a possibility that our revenue in the bond retirement fund could drop by $280,000 if all that goes through. I just wanted to throw all that out there as well.
Thank you, Mr. Plesky. Mr. Sarah.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to go back to the swimming pool because I know that was one of the questions in conversations that I've had. And Mayor, you and I have had that conversation a couple times. I would support one without a problem. But as I explained to you in the past, if we don't have a mechanism to maintain it, it's not worth building. You had a consultant come in and tell us that they're a loss leader, and I've had a whole different view of it since then. I didn't realize we were losing that much on pools, but it explains why we're in the shape we are with the only 2 pools that we have left. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sarah. Mr. Lupien.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I don't think I heard the mayor mention the pool today. But I know it's a hot topic of conversation for a lot of my colleagues on council, not because they wouldn't like to have a pool, but because they disagree about the way in which to obtain one. Mr. Tolet offers an interesting option, putting it up for a vote. I'm going to swim in a different direction, and I'm going to go back to what I would like to see as a First Ward councilman, and what I know a lot of the residents of the First Ward would like to see. Giving the kind of strength and support to our police forcing staff that they need through salaries. We're bleeding young guys. I've had conversations with police officers. In some cases, there's a 25% gap between the salaries that Elyria offers and other police departments offer. And frankly, a lot of the young guys are jumping ship and going there, and the ones that we are keeping are staying because they feel a sense of loyalty to the organization. They feel like they've been here a long time and they're comfortable in their position and they want to continue, and that's admirable. But for the younger generation, for Gen Z, let's face it, they're looking at the salaries. Mm-hmm. So if we could use some ARPA funding or examine ARPA funding to go into merit-based salaries for police officers, merit-based bonuses, or just a general salary increase, we can be sophisticated about the way we do it. It doesn't have to be press the button, increase all salaries. It could be contoured to merit. It could be based on bonuses. We could boost recruitment. If anybody were to ask me at this point in time where the First Ward is at, it's those 2 issues: flood relief through tiling on Miami and helping our police force by getting them some salaries that might help us with retention.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lupien. Mrs. Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, Mr. Stewart's hand was up before mine, but I'll go next.
Did not see Mr. Stewart's hand up.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you, Ms. Mitchell. So I guess in regards to when I would kind of defer it over to the law director, to the mayor, I mean, are you, based on what you're hearing from the citizens over, are you prepared in the near future to kind of give us, I know we're waiting to see what ends up happening here on the election day, but can we have an idea of maybe what you're talking about, whether at this time you're ready to do something or send us a PDF or, I mean, you're just kind of freeboarding out there saying this is some of the things that you're hearing, but ultimately putting it down to pen to paper, I mean, where things are at.
Yeah, so I think a part of this is twofold, and I want to address a couple of things through you, Chairman, of kind of what I've heard. I'll start with the economic development side of this, because I think my big concern with this opportunity, and we heard residents when we first got it, is we need to have a return on this money. Like whatever we do in this investment, we should see some sort of economic return. And so some of the things that I've thought about that, I think we should be thinking about and considering is getting rid of dilapidated buildings around the town. So purchasing properties and cleaning up properties, because I think that will increase the property value and have sites ready for companies. We constantly hear the need for sites, and we just don't have them ready in the city. Related to that is the sites that we do have that are attractive don't have the infrastructure underneath it. So I've been in conversations with a number of companies, which again, I appreciate y'all moving forward with the Chestnut Commons piece, because we've been in conversations. I was on a call a week and a half ago with another business that wants to come to town that a lot of people would get excited about, but the challenge is the sewer capacity over in Chestnut Commons. So they're saying, hey, what's the plan for the city to build out this? It's an $8 million project. And I'm saying, hey, I'm talking with city council about that. We're trying to look at all the needs in the city, and this is one I'd like to put before them to pay for. And that's why I'm like, just hold off on spending the money for a week and a half or a month at the time so that we can get through this and then be able to present some of these things. So the sewer piece, and then what we're doing around the housing beautification, that raises up people's economic base for their homes, adding value to their homes. And again, I thank Councilman Oswald for really pushing that. And we already are at the max in terms of, and one action I don't know if you can make tonight that I would ask for in terms of ARPA is adding that additional $250,000 to the home beautification program, because we've already maxed out. The applications have come in and we've already maxed out because it's gotten such a huge response, and it's creating a viral movement in the city of people just wanting to spruce up their homes and improve their homes. So to me, that's going to have a return of investment. That's improving the neighborhoods and communities. The thing I caution us on big time is hiring and salaries with this money. This is money that, as Councilman Stewart mentioned, will not be here after 2024. And if we make a bunch of salary decisions with this that we got to live with after this, that is one of my major concerns. And so, one of the things the finance director and I will be spending time planning on is like right sizing our organization as a city, like what is the right appropriate size for departments, et cetera, so that we can pay people what they're worth. But we also got to understand that, that's a race I'm not sure we want to get into, is trying to race to the top of salaries with folks. We need to create a quality work environment, a quality city, pay people a fair wage, which I think we're at that place. And we're always assessing that, as you know, but I very much caution us against the salary. So again, once we get through next week, I think all energy should be put towards communicating on issue 8 and making sure that gets passed. And then, and again, the pool to me is, I don't even swim, so it's interesting. I've become the pool guy and I don't even swim. It's something I've heard from the residents. It's not even like it's not necessarily the top thing I hear from residents. It's just something we know people would enjoy. It adds to that quality of life in the city. But to me, that is just one aspect of a number of quality of life investments that I think we've already done together. When you think about what we've done downtown with some of the parks, so we're doing the work. And I think we always have to pause and say, oh yeah, we are doing the work. West Park Trail has officially started its construction. We're creating really high quality of life things in the city. I think we got to pat ourselves on the back for that. But there always can be more investments in the quality of life to make people want to live here and enjoy living here, which again has that return of investment. So thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, Mrs. Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I'll be brief. I'm always going to advocate for streets. Thank you, Mr. Oswald, for mentioning that. So that's what I would want to see, not only in my ward, 6th Ward, but all over the city. If you ask the residents, other than their water bill and their sanitation bill, they complain about the streets. Even though right now we're in the midst of major construction and they're complaining about that, when it's done, and they are complaining, when it's done, they'll be happy. So I would like to see more money. And I'm begging, I will always ask for more money. I want to see more money put in the streets. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Mitchell. Mr. Lippian.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. So, as they say, just keep swimming, just keep swimming. My thoughts are, and for what it's worth, that the mayor produced a long list of ideas, moonshots, some of them, others, very real possibilities for what we could do in the city. I've heard a lot of my council colleagues express other interests that they have. The last thing I want to see the mayor do is expend a lot of work preparing a proposal for everything that gets diced to pieces in council skeptical review. So perhaps to help focus our body a little bit, we can request from the list of things that he produced actual items council would consider and be interested in addition to some of the items that other colleagues have brought up today, and see the mayor come back with a plan for that, because then it will be more focused around initiatives the mayor supports that council is already interested in, and a smattering of interests from individual ward members. I think that way it could be fair, that way it could be transparent, and I would like to think that council could put forth a good faith effort to really sit down and negotiate and find a compromise on that, and that would be good for the city.
Thank you, Mr. Lippian. Are there any more questions? Any more comments? You're good, Mayor Whitfield? Good. Everybody's good. Okay. Well, personally, I felt it was a very lively, energetic discussion. So hats off to everyone. This is a good start. Good suggestions were made. We'll see where we go, but let's keep the discussion going. Thank you. Seeing no further business for community development, I'd accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Mrs. Mitchell and seconded by Mr. Oswald.
Question.
Question on the motion. All in favor of the motion, please use the voting sign aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carried. Meeting adjourned.
Okay, we're going to continue on with finance. Okay. think the law director is kind of working with Captain Grooms in regards to, it's okay. Okay, item number 1. We've considered the matter of the purchase of 8 Ford Explorer police cruisers or similar of type to the statewide purchasing. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to purchase said vehicles for Elyria, Police Department at a cost of not to exceed $365,272. Monies have been appropriated in the 2023 budget. Standard emergency applies. Can I get a motion to get it on the floor? Moved by Mr. Sarah.
Second.
Second by Mr. Schneider. Captain Grooms.
Correct. We are asking for permission to purchase 8 new Ford Explorers. The issue came up with these vehicles being ready immediately. Should we wait to purchase, we won't be able to purchase until mid-2024. So we're asking for this to be passed as an emergency.
Okay. Now, this is just for the purchase. Now, does this outfit the vehicles also, or just strictly as far as the need for those?
This fully outfits the vehicle.
Fully outfit the vehicles? Okay.
Correct.
Does anybody, Mr. Tolet?
The funds have been allocated for in the budget, so I'm ready to go if you are.
Does the committee have any other questions?
Call for the question.
Question's been called. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. We've considered the matter of the FFY 2024 IDEP STEP grant through the Ohio Department of Public Safety, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to apply for and accept the said grant. Standard emergency applies due to the application deadline. Can I get a motion to get it on the floor?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Sarah.
Second.
Second by Mr. Schneider. Captain Grooms.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we are asking to, as it says, apply and accept this grant that we've been a part of for several years. It does for the purpose of running DUI checkpoints, running speed, and it's a fully reimbursed funds.
Right, this is just another standard that we're, like Captain Groom said, so I'm fully in support of that. Does anybody have any more discussion?
Call for the question.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Item number 3, we've considered a matter of amending ordinance number 2023-35. An ordinance authorizing the amendment of said ordinance for the purchase of patrol and surveillance cameras and equipment that are compatible to the Elyria Police Department's current system. Standard emergency applies. Can I get a motion to get it on the floor?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Sarah.
Second.
Second by Mr. Schneider. Captain Grooms.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we've been working with Genetec, the current system that we have, who offers GSA pricing at a price point $1,500 less per unit, which allows us to expand the project even further and not put it out for bid, just simply use the GSA pricing through Genetec.
I know when the chief was here, he expounded upon that the need for these additional cameras, so, and I think there's another item here that needs to be, where they will be discussing as well, so, well, they're obviously going to be put to good use. Mr. Tolet.
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is also emergency.
Yes, this is also an emergency. Mr. Sarah.
Through you, Mr. Chair, do any of these cameras or surveillance equipment go like for downtown area? Or is that something that's going to be separate?
This will be something separate. As it's currently written, it's for specific areas, and it does not include the downtown area.
Thank you.
Is there any further discussion?
Call for the question.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Item number 4, we consider the matter of amendment to ordinance number 2022-7 for the purchase of additional body-worn cameras and in-car cameras for the Elyria Police Department. An ordinance authorizing the amendment to said ordinance for the purchase of additional equipment and to be added to the current contract with Axon Enterprises Incorporated. Standard emergency applies. Can I get a motion on the floor?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Sarah, second by Ms. Davis. Captain Grooms.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we are asking to accept a grant in the amount of $118,000 towards the purchase of additional body cams in current system that we're already using.
Again, this is another request that the chief did last week, so the need for these. Does anybody have any further discussion?
Question?
Through you, Mr. Chair, what was the additional amount of money did you have, the not to exceed? I'm sorry.
In addition to the $118,000, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, you gave an amount of money. Didn't you just state an amount of money? What the additional was gonna?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. We are asking to accept $118,000 in grant money. The total cost is $167,000, from my understanding, which we have the balance of already budgeted.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Just because, what's the addition?
Captain Grooms, just so there's clarity, just want to make sure for the committee report, because it's got to reference a dollar amount.
Yeah, so the dollar amount for the additional cameras. So initially, let's see.
Are we talking about number 4 on the?
Yes.
Right. So we're adding on to the additional contract. Do you know what the additional amount will be for those extra cameras? Or has the money been appropriated?
Yes. So the total cost of it, yeah. So
The 118.
Yes, so, correct. The 118, which would be in grant funding, then an extra 49,000 that the Elyria Police Department would come up with, that's already been appropriated in the budget.
Okay,
So I'm sorry, I misunderstood. 49,000 would be our portion,
that's our portion.
167
is the total.
Through you, Chairman, 167 is the total.
right.
Okay. Do we have to,
118 would be reimbursed.
so we have to pay the full amount and then we'll get a reimbursement?
That's my understanding.
Okay. So, through you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Farrell, then do we need to, make the provision then for the full 167?
In the committee report?
Yes. Okay.
All right.
All right, so 167, 799 and 69 cents.
Correct.
But you're just letting the committee know that when it's all said and done,
It's going to
we're gonna be out 40 grand,
49 grand.
give or take. All right. Thanks for following and hanging in there with me, Captain. Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Tolet.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just also that 49 has already been allocated into the budget.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, that's correct.
Just for the committee to know.
Has this been updated? Through you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Farrell's spoken, so the money's been appropriated, we're good. Yes, for that amount, yes, that's the full amount.
Does the motion concur with the total amount of $168,000?
Concur.
Does the second? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Nope. Item number 5. We've considered the matter of the Project Safe Program grant in order to authorize the mayor to submit an application, except if offered, the 2021 Project Safe Neighborhood Grant sponsored by the Northern Ohio Violent Crime Consortium. Standard emergency applies. Can I get a motion to get it on the floor?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Schneider.
Second.
Second by Mr. Sarah. Captain Grooms.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Again, this is something that we've been a part of for several years, along with other major law enforcement agencies around the state of Ohio, and we're just asking to continue to be a part of that through this grant application process.
Standard, what we're doing over there. Does anybody have any more discussion? Call for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Item number 6. We've considered the matter of waiving fees for the rezoning and conditional use request to the Planning Commission for property on Murray Ridge Road to be used by the Elyria Police Department, an ordinance authorizing the waiving of said fees. Can I get a motion to get it on the floor?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Schneider. Second by Mr. Tolet. Captain Grooms.
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is a project in conjunction with the FBI for a training facility that we hope to bring in law enforcement agencies from all over the state of Ohio, and we're asking that the fees be waived for this.
Right, I think this program was started some time ago under with Chief Whiteley. Yeah, so, Law Director Derry.
Yes, so thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. The property, in order for this project to move forward, needs to go through the rezoning process, and therefore, as you well know, there's a application fee to go through that process, and due to the fact that it is a city-owned property, that's why there's a request for that application fee to be waived and or reimbursed. And the only way to make that happen is for council to consider that. So that's why this is being brought before you today. Because essentially, otherwise, what's happening is that you'll have police paying a fee to the building department, and it's basically just, you know, $1 going to another dollar and one hand going to another hand. It's all the city.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Oswald.
Through Mr. Chair, I'm not on this committee, but question, because I've heard it's been a while since this is finally going to happen. And it's going to be together partnered with the FBI. And I originally thought maybe a shooting range. Is that correct? First off?
Through you, Mr. Chair. That's correct. We've already completed the first phase of that for the Elyria Police Department's shooting range. But there are going to be additional buildings that the FBI would like to have for training facilities as well.
And through you, Mr. Chair again, so who's paying for all that part of it? Are they going to be partnering with money or? Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the FBI has allocated several $1 million to complete this project.
Oh, cool. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Schneider.
Through you, Mr. Chair, do you know, is this property accessed through the central maintenance garage? It just has like a parcel that belongs to Murray Ridge Road? It's behind, correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, that's correct. Right now, the access point is through the central maintenance garage.
Okay, thank you.
This is an emergency. Does the motion concur? Does the second?
Concur.
Is there any further discussion? Don't mess with Ms. Davis, Mr. Tolet. Is there any further discussion? Question's been called. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Thank you, Captain Grooms. Item number 7. We consider the matter of a NOPEC grant in order to authorize the mayor to submit an application for and accept, if offered, said NOPEC NEC formula grant. Can I get a motion to get it on the floor?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Schneider.
Second.
Second by Mr. Sarah. Engineer McKillips.
Thank you. Good evening. Through you, Mr. Chair. The city is applying for a NOPEC formula grant. This is a grant that the city's received funds for in the previous years. This year's allocation is about $108,000, bringing the total amount of funding available today through NOPEC to $208,907.05. The city will be looking at using these funds for solar-powered benches and energy-efficient lighting at the proposed Pocket Park project on 15th Street and West Ave. Also, funding will be used to continue to convert the old lighting in the downtown area to newer, more efficient LED luminaires. We will be looking at working with a firm that specializes in lighting layouts to maximize the lumens from these new light fixtures within the project areas, and this is, 100% grant.
Okay. Engineer McKellips, just so there's clarity, I know just kind of going through the emails, so the overall is 209,000,
Yes.
but based on the Macaulay Group, they're saying it's 108. Is that we should be, the grant award, is that the total amount of 108,636, or?
That's this year's allocation. No, last year's allocation was about 98,000,
Right.
and I believe we should have gone through this process last year as well. I believe.
Yeah, because I know she's just saying here the amount. I'm sorry. Let me just say this referral should be in 2023 NOPEC formula grant at 108,636, not for the whole amount of 209,000 that the city has already spent in total.
I know we have not spent last year's allocation yet.
Okay, so I just want to make sure. There's just kind of confusion in the dollar amount, and I just want to make sure that they were allocating what was there.
And through you,
Law
Mr.
Director
Chair,
Geary.
Engineer McKillips, we do have an ordinance for the $98,853 from 2022. That's the amount you said has not yet been allocated?
It's not been spent.
Not yet been spent?
Correct.
So do we need a new ordinance to include that amount?
I don't believe so.
Okay, so should we separate out that 98,000 and only use
The 108,
the 108,636?
I would think so. I
Okay.
think that'd be fine.
Okay, so, Mr. Chair, we'll use 108,636? Okay. I know there's several different types of
Right.
grants from NOPEC, so I just wanted to make sure that
Right.
I'm
Okay.
comparing apples to apples.
Does the motion concur with the 108,000?
The motion concurs with 108,000.
Second.
Concur.
Okay. Is there any further discussion?
Question?
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Item number 8. We've considered the matter of an EECB grant, Emergency Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant Program, in order to authorize the mayor to submit an application and accept, if offered, the said grant. Can I get a motion to get it on the floor?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Davis,
Second.
second by Mr. Sarah. Engineer McKillips.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. This is an EECBG grant. It's a formula grant through the Department of Energy. The city's 2023 allotment is $115,220. Pre-applications for this grant are due on April 28th, but the city's paperwork has already been submitted to the Department of Energy. We are also looking at using these funds for continuation of lighting improvements or other energy efficient projects around the downtown area. The specific project components for this grant will be submitted at a later date after we have been notified by the grant department regarding our pre-application submission. This is also a 100% grant up to the city's allotted amount of $115,220.
I'll have to amend the committee report to read $115,200. Excuse me, $220. Thank you. Does the motion concur? Does the motion concur?
Concur.
Does the second?
Concur.
Ms. McKillips, does this need for an emergency?
No, it does not.
Oh, okay. Is there any further discussion?
Council President.
Ms. Davis, you have your hand up?
Through you, Chair. So the application has already been filed since it needs to be there by the 28th, you say?
Yes, the actual pre-application's already been submitted. Once we get a date from the Department of Energy's grant department as to when they need the project components, at that point in time, we will need to submit the legislation, which right now we're looking at June. So there's time for a just regular suspension of rules.
Mayor Whitfield?
Through you, Council Pres, I just wanted to put on your radar, this funding is a part of the bipartisan infrastructure legislation that was passed, and I think what I really want to share with you all is that there's a lot of resources in this bucket of funds that I'm hoping we take advantage of. Again, as I mentioned before, last week I was with a group of mayors, and this is the topic. Like this IJA funds, the Inflation Reduction Act funds. There's so much money in the ecosystem right now, and we need to make sure we get as much as we can coming to the city of Elyria. So I think this is just one. This is a very small dollar amount, and there's a whole lot more to come. So just kind of buckle up, and if you read up on opportunities, please send them over so that we can go after them. And that's I just want to make sure y'all aware. This is a big deal, this program, and the money's out there.
Very good. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Item number 9. We consider the matter of an amendment number 10 with AECom Technical Services Incorporated for the SSO, CSO, and the WWPCP Wet Weather Program for 2023. In order to authorize the mayor to enter into an amendment number 10 for the said agreement with AECom, additional monies of $1,200,000 is requested and are appropriated in the 2023 wastewater miscellaneous fund professional services. Can I get a motion to get it on the floor?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Sarah, second by Ms. Davis. Engineer McKillips.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. This is the 10th amendment between the city and AECom for technical services on our wet weather program. As you know, this past January, our consent decree was finalized. Our effective date is January 10th. So this year is a year that we are working with very closely with wastewater and AECom to make sure that all of the ingredients of our consent decree for the first year are in place. That's one thing that AECom is working diligently on this year. It includes project integration and coordination. They're going to continue to work on our sewer model, not only so that we have a model, but to support our other consultants that require the model for our other wastewater projects. They're in the process of designing our plan improvements as part of our consent decree. And again, there are other components flow monitoring that's required by our consent decree, semi-annual reports. There's other factors that we want to make sure that we get in place for this first year of our mandated program.
Law Director Derry.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Engineer McKillips, if perchance your department has a copy of amendment number 9, if you could send that our way. Yes. We were able to find number 8, but we're not able to find number 9.
Number 9,
So,
okay.
thank you. That would help us out greatly.
This is just all part of the process that was discussed earlier with all what we're mandated now by over the years. And so now we have a plan in place that we've been beholden to by the US EPA. So this is all part of that. So if there's any further discussion, if not,
Question.
all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Item number 10, we've considered the matter of entering into a professional service agreement for construction management with K.E. McCartney and Associates. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into said professional service agreement at an amount not to exceed $750,000. Can I get a motion to get it on the floor?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Serra, second by Mr. Schneider. Engineer McKillips.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, we are requesting authorization, as you stated, for the mayor to enter into an agreement with K. McCartney for construction management and inspection services for the East Broad Street widening project. We went through a quality-based selection process. Five engineering firms responded to a request for qualifications. K. McCartney was selected as the most qualified firm by their selection group. With this project being an LPA project, which means it's a local public agency ran project through ODOT, a scope of services needs to be approved and agreed not only by the city, but also by ODOT. So ODOT and the city will then enter into a joint agreement with K. McCartney. Now, the cost is not to exceed $750,000, which sounds like a lot. It's about 10% of the actual construction costs, which is standard for these size projects. This cost qualifies for the 80-20 split, with the city's 20% being paid with muni motor vehicle funds and or the state infrastructure bank loan. And we request that this be passed as an emergency due to the project schedule and timing to get the agreement executed.
Okay, let's start with does the motion concur with the emergency?
Concur.
As is the second? The second does concur. Finance Director Plusky, any questions in regards to the 80-20 split as far as the muni motor vehicles?
What is this project for?
The East Broad Street, the big roadway project.
Oh, okay. So 80% is grant?
Yes.
20%. Yeah.
And we're in the process of getting a state infrastructure bank loan of $1 million for this project.
Yeah.
Give or take.
It'll either be muni motor vehicle or the street construction M&R fund. To be determined.
Okay. Mr. Oswald?
Not on the committee, but question for Ms. McKillips through you, Mr. Chair. So is this the work where they have somebody standing there recording what work they're doing and, you know, as the project goes along? Is that what we're paying for?
It does include that portion of it, but it also includes the project management also. So administration of this project, because it's a local public agency project through ODOT, the city is responsible for performing all of the paperwork that's required by the federal government. And that's way more paperwork than our department could ever handle for a project that size. So not only will they be doing the inspections on the roadway, they'll be making sure that all the testing that's performed is done correctly. They'll be doing interviews for wages for employees. They'll be making sure that the disadvantaged business enterprise contractors are doing what they're supposed to be doing. They'll make sure that all the quantities each month when we go to do a pay estimate are correct. I can't even mention all the paperwork that's required, but they will be performing all of that.
Okay, thanks.
It's a lot of work.
A lot of work. Well, I guess that's what we do on a lot of these projects. That's why I was wondering, we're just overloaded, so we just hire a company to do that?
Yes, on a project this size with as much, yeah, they have a whole office of people to take care of that project, whereas, yeah,
Oh,
in
good.
our office, we don't, so.
Thank you. And they're right on East Broad Street.
Oh, that helps.
All right, is there any further discussion?
Question.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Thank you, Ms. McKillips.
Thank you.
Item number 11 has been removed at the request of Ms. McKillips. Is it coming back at a later date, Ms. McKillips, or? Okay. All right, number 12, we'll do this one, I guess, the matter of amendments of the permanent appropriations. Finance Director Plesky.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we don't have any to bring forward tonight, but there may be one that the mayor would like to discuss.
Yes. Mayor Whitfield?
Thank you, Council President. As I mentioned earlier, the Spruce Up Elyria Home Beautification Program, last year, I think we asked for $500K, but, we hadn't gotten up and running yet. This year, we had $250K allocated, and as of today, we've had 192 applications mailed out. 71 applications have been received. We've pre-approved 29 applications that total $138,000. There are 6 that have current purchase orders, and we have 36 in the pipeline. So just between what we have today, all the money would be gone. So our request is to go back to the original amount of $500K total. So to increase the home beautification budget $250,000 so that we can receive more applications. Thank you.
So the mayor's asking for first of all, let's get a motion to get it on the floor to appropriate an additional $250,000 into the home beautification using ARPA funds. So a motion by Mr. Sierra, second by Ms. Davis. Discussion, Mr. Tollett and then Mr. Oswald.
Through you, Mr. Chair, through ARPA funds, correct?
Mm-hmm.
To use ARPA funds for this, that'll need to go into the ordinance, correct?
Well, just to the appropriate, Finance Director Plesky.
It'll be on the exhibit. Yeah.
Using ARPA
There'll be an
funds.
exhibit, just like any other permanent appropriation change, it'll be exhibit attached.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. Davis, forgive me, I know Mr. Oswald, let me do the committee and then, so Ms. Davis.
Okay, through you, Mr. Chair. My question is, do they pay this money back, or are we doing, how are we handling this? I mean, I'm all for it because my sidewalks, it's all beautification. So how's this handled?
Through you, Council President, this is a straight grant, so this does not require any payback. This is a straight grant that they have to get multiple quotes for, that the Community Development Department reviews and approves, and then issues out the funds.
Through you, Chair. So is this on the website? I know about it, but you say you have a few that has already applied for it. I'm just trying to see, is it coming in like citywide or in a certain section?
Through you, Council President. So it's coming across citywide. It's on our website. If you go on cityofelyria.org, .org, cityofaleria.org, and click on Spruce Up. And I'm laughing because I learned today that in certain neighborhoods, they're working together. Like, hey, we all got to get our applications in because they know this opportunity is there. So it's interesting to see neighbors are kind of like, hey, I'm doing this. And again, it's kind of getting that momentum in certain neighborhoods. Interesting, the street is Spruce Street. You know, so they're all working together on Spruce Street for the Spruce Up.
But these funds are only in a targeted, not in a census tract area per the ARPA funding, right?
Yeah, so through you, Council Pres, it is, if you are in one of the qualified census checks, you're pre-approved, but if you're not, you can be income eligible for the program as well.
Mr. Oswald?
Through you, Mr. President, or Chairman. And another thing to add, that when I was talking to Ms. Scott today, she said that they get the $5,000, but there's been $21,000 that they've spent out of their own pocket. So they're actually, when they go to do some work and they know they can get $5,000, and maybe it costs an extra $1,000 or $2,000. So, you know, they're starting to do a little bit more with it. And a lot of the contractors that are being used are city contractors. So it's like a super win situation for us, you know. So yeah, this has been really great. Thank you.
Good. I don't think we... Yeah. So for the record here, we've contested the matter that amendments to 2023 permanent appropriations are authorizing amending the ordinance number 2023-34 as per the attached and discussed in the amount of $250,000 to be paid out of the home beautification using ARPA funds. I know there's been a motion, but as far as a committee report. Again, for the record, does the motion concur?
So moved, concur.
Does the second? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Hearing no more further business to come before this committee, entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.